Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, I would like to talk to you about how to study. This is going to cover some study skills and note taking. So, the first thing to think about is why are notes important? Now, notes can be important for anything that you are hoping to learn and retain. This can be inside of a class, or this could be something that you're trying to learn for you personally, something that you're trying to do for a job, or just something that you're interested in. Notes can help you so that you can remember things that you think you might forget, or perhaps points in a lecture or video or article that you need to research a little bit more, or something that maybe you don't quite understand yet. Writing things down has actually been shown to help be able to remember things better. Now, according to the study that I read, it was handwritten notes actually retained information better than typed notes. So that's something that you can keep in mind as you're studying is if you take the important points, even if they are typed and you have typed notes or wherever you're getting them from, is if you do the act of actually physically writing them down on a piece of paper with a pen or a pencil, that can actually help you remember things better. Notes also give you the ability to have something to refer back to. So if you are struggling to remember what was going on, say during a lecture or during a video, then the notes can help you remember your thought process and that train of thought that you had so that you can go back to where you were before. For some people, notes can actually also help them focus. So, for a lot of this, I am going to be using the example of a lecture in a classroom because that's a really common use of notes, but just know that notes can be useful in other things as well. So, when you are sitting in a classroom of any variety, it can sometimes be really hard to focus on what's going on for the entire time that the class is happening. For a lot of people, they can focus on something for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but sitting somewhere for, say, an hour or 2 hours and keeping focus the entire time can actually be a real struggle. So, having notes that you are taking can help keep you in that moment and help keep you focused on what's going on so you don't start thinking of other things like your grocery list or the bills that you need to pay or something funny that you saw online. You're more focused on what's happening. When you have your notes, they can also sometimes help you make connections. So, most teachers and most people that create videos for educational content, and this could be videos, podcasts, whatever, um, will try to have some organization to what they're talking about. But having the notes and the act of making the notes can sometimes help you make these connections between topics that maybe you didn't see before. It can also help you realize things that are important. For example, a lot of teachers will emphasize what they consider an important topic, so they might bring it up 3, 4, or 5 times during a single lecture. And maybe you didn't realize it was important for the topic at hand, but the subject matter expert does think it's important. So, them emphasizing it and you seeing it in your notes repeatedly can be a good hint that this is something that might be important. Notes can also be used for prep work, so for future assignments, future classes. So if you need to have previous knowledge and prior experience, having your notes and referring back to your notes can be really useful. Most classes, degrees, jobs will have some variety of reference back to something, whether that's prerequisites, as in prerequisite knowledge, or whether that's, oh, remember when last semester you did this or last quarter you did that. Notes can help you so that you know what was happening and you can say, oh, yeah, I do remember that now. Oh, yes, I have done this report before, but I only do it once a year, so sometimes I forget how I did it or what's needed. So, having those notes can help you when you need to do something, say, infrequently or refer back to something that you don't do every day. Now, now that we can think about why notes are important, there's a couple of different ways to take our notes. So, one option that we could have for taking notes is something called sketch notes. So if you are somebody that does a more visual type of learning and you remember things that you see more than what you hear, sketch notes could work for you. So this is a combination of words, doodles, visuals, things like that. It's designed for people that are very visual people. If you enjoy doodling, then this might be a good note-taking strategy for you. For some people, doodling can improve focus. So I actually know several teachers and professors that will actually doodle during meetings because it helps them focus on what's going on during the meeting. An important note for sketch notes is artistic ability is not required. It doesn't matter if your doodles are good or not. It just matters that they are there. You can also do things like have boxes, highlights, color coding, and other ways of distinguishing concepts. So you can have, your title in larger font, but then you can also do things like pretty decorative boxes around it. The basic technique for sketch notes is that you have a header for the page, the overall topic, and then you write your ideas and what comes to mind as you are listening or reading what's going on. And so you can then say, oh, well, this idea over here actually connects to that idea over there. And then you can do things like draw arrows, or you can have little sketched stick figures or something like that. One way you could see if this works for you is you could try it with something that you want to learn. So pick something that you're interested in, doesn't matter what it is, find an article or a video about it, and then try doing some sketch notes to see if this works for you while you watch that video or read that article. Can you make a page that will give you sort of a reference for what it is that you're trying to learn? Now, another option that people will sometimes use for notes is outline form notes. So, outline form notes, they can be informal. They will generally use indents, but you don't have to have a full outline. So, in a full traditional outline, all ones must have a 2, all A's must have a B. But when you have outline form notes, you don't have to follow that. You can use the format without having to follow these specific directions. The nest idea for some people makes them able to visualize their notes better. Headings and subheadings are a way of being able to organize your thoughts. So if you have a topic that you're trying to learn, that topic probably has several points about what that topic is, why it's important, when you're going to use it later, other places you can reference. But there's a whole bunch of different ways that you could organize your notes using an outline, depending on what makes the most sense for you. If you do an outline, you can also do things like take notes and then reorganize later. So you can take notes as you are going through the class, watching the video, whatever that happens to be, and then come back to your notes afterwards and organize it in a way that makes sense for you. And that can be part of your learning process. So again, I'll say try this. See if it works for you. Pick something that you're interested in. Maybe it's an article, maybe it's a video, maybe it's a podcast. Try taking some notes on it. Are you able to do an outline right away? Do you take some notes and then need to put it into an outline later? How's your outline looking? Outlines don't have to be full sentences. They can be just a word or a thought or a partial sentence. And then you can organize them how you like. Now, for some people, they like using audio notes. Now, I do have to give a little bit of a disclaimer for this. This is not something that I can do, so I am referencing people that I know that do this. I do not have experience with this working well. Personally, I do not remember what people tell me like this, but if you are someone who remembers things that you hear very easily, audio notes might be the way to go for you. So if you would always prefer, say, an audiobook to reading a book or a podcast to reading an article, audio notes might be for you. You can do things like record classes, but you have to ask permission. So if it's a video or something, you can just listen to the video. But if you are in an actual class with an actual person, you have to go ask that person, hey, is it all right if I record the class? I'll be using it in this way. Most people are probably fine with it, but it is something that you want to check first. Another thing that you can do is you can try to take some notes or share notes with somebody else, and then you can have the computer or a friend read those notes and record them. That's actually one of the things that AI is getting better and better at, is a more realistic sounding voice reading text. It used to be way back in the dark ages that all of the computer generated voices had this really kind of creepy quality to them. But with the way that AI has been working, it's actually been a lot more like here is an actual human, and it's much closer to that. Another thing you can do with audio notes is you can actually have your textbooks read to you. Sometimes computers can do this. Sometimes you can buy the audio version. If you have somebody else who's in the class, they could read the textbook, record it, and you could share it. But you need to be very careful with permissions and legality. So, if it's a free textbook that's online and is specifically copyright free and everything, it's not as big of a deal. But if it's a textbook that people are currently paying money for and somebody has copyright claim on it, you can't just record it indiscriminately. There's some things about fair use that you have to keep in mind. So just please be careful with permissions and legality if you're going to do any variety of textbook reading. Some people actually also process better when talking. So one of the things that I know some people will do is they will actually use one of the voice AI companions and talk to that companion and have them just sort of mirror information back. So they'll have their topic, topic blah blah, and then they'll say, oh, and then blah blah, don't forget about A, B, and C. And then the AI will respond back, thank you for telling me about project blah blah. Did I understand you where you said thing A? And just that interaction for some people actually makes them remember the information better. There's actually a lot of AIs that do have voice capabilities, and you can use them to bounce ideas off of, you can use them to take notes with, and there's lots of different ways that you can incorporate that. That's actually one of the things AI is really good for and is a reasonable use of AI for study help. Another thing that you could do for studying is study groups. Now, study groups do have a little bit of a please be careful caveat. You can have formal or informal study groups, sort of an official post it to the entire class. Hey, does anybody want to study with us? You can have less formal ones where you just choose to take classes with maybe friends or acquaintances and study with them. One of the things that's really nice about study groups is you can share your notes together. So if, let's say, you have 4 people in a group and everybody is taking notes and they're taking different kinds of notes, being able to pool those resources will mean you're able to see things from other perspectives and potentially see things that you may have missed before. It also will have the ability to, if there's something that you understand that one of your groupmates don't, or vice versa, you can explain things to each other. And the act of actually explaining something to someone else is actually a great test of knowledge. It doesn't necessarily seem like it would be, but let me assure you that explaining something to somebody really tests how well you understand a thing. And it will find all of the gaps in your knowledge or the thing that you thought you understood, but you actually really didn't as soon as you try to explain it to somebody who doesn't get it at all. So a study group can be really good for that. Another thing that a study group can be really good for is accountability. For some people, this accountability is vital. And having a check in once or twice a week with other people that you see, whether it's in person, online, or whatever, and saying, yes, I've done my homework, I've read the materials, I've gone through the notes, I've done whatever it is you need to do. And sort of having that check in with a real person makes it a lot harder for most people to say, oh, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. That, oh, I'll do it tomorrow phenomenon can be a real struggle, especially with classes, because you have such a limited amount of time. And for a lot of people, they have other stuff going on, whether it's other classes or jobs or families, making sure that you aren't sort of wasting any of your time with, oh, I'll do it later. Another thing that you can do with a study group is talk about how you study and see if there's anything that you want to change about your study habits. Maybe somebody in the group does something that you think is really brilliant, and then you want to go try that to see if that study habit works for you. Maybe somebody sees something that you're doing and thinks it's really brilliant, and you can share those strategies with each other. So you can really get a lot out of study groups. And it's a great way to feel less isolated while you're in class. One of the issues with a lot of people is that they feel very alone, even if they are in a class with other people, even if they're in a class in person with a lot of other people. It can sometimes feel like you're the only person that doesn't get it. You're sitting in the room, you're looking around the room, and you're thinking, oh, why am I the only person that doesn't understand? Why am I the only person that isn't following? And the answer is you're probably not. There's probably a lot of people that aren't following. They just aren't saying anything, just like you're not saying anything. So they're looking at you thinking, oh, wow, they really get it. And so having a study group where you can say, okay, I didn't understand this at all. And then four other people in the room go, yeah, I have no idea. And then you have to go through your notes and the materials to go find the thing that you don't understand can make you feel less isolated because there are, quite frankly, some concepts and topics that are really hard to understand. Now, obviously, I'm coming at this from a STEM perspective, so most of my examples are going to be STEM related. An example in one of my classes that I teach frequently is primary keys versus foreign keys. And I might be sitting there thinking, well, primary key is this, foreign key is that, here's how they're different, don't forget about that. And if I didn't know better, I would think that that's a relatively simple topic. But when most students hear it the first time, they sit, they nod, they go, yeah, yeah, and then they have to apply it and they're like, yeah, I have no idea what you just said. So having a study group with four other people who are like, yeah, I have no idea what that means. And then being able to go do some of the background reading, listen to the video again, go through their notes again, look at the examples given again, and having that camaraderie of everybody trying to figure it out means that it's a lot easier to figure that thing out. Now, these sort of downside to study groups. You have to be careful when you're picking your group. If you have a mismatched group or you have a group with different work ethics, this can be a big problem. If you have one person in the group that understands things and the rest of the group doesn't, that's going to get frustrating really quickly. It's going to get frustrating in the reverse too. If you have an entire group of people who understand what's going on and one person who doesn't, that's going to be a problem for everybody. You want to make sure that nobody is too far ahead or too far behind in the group so they are all sort of in the same place. And you also want to have similar work ethics. So somebody that's always procrastinating, yeah, I'll do it later. No, I don't need to take notes. How long can this lab possibly take? Whereas somebody in the group who has a work ethic of, oh, yes, I work on this for 1 hour a day at 11 a.m. and I review my notes on Fridays and I start my labs on Wednesdays, like that's going to give some conflict to the study group that nobody is going to enjoy. So you want to make sure that you are careful when picking groups to make sure that they are nice and equal and everybody will get along well. Now, another thing about studying that we can look at is you're probably going to have a volume issue. When you're trying to learn something new, whether this is in a class with a teacher or self-guided, there's going to be a lot of material that you will need to ingest and understand. One of the things that you can do to make this happen a little quicker is read a little quicker. Now, I'm not just saying, oh yeah, read a little quicker, like, oh yeah, try a little harder, because that's not helpful to anybody. Some specific actionable things that you can do to make your reading go a little bit faster. You can do something called scanning for keywords or scanning for concepts. So if you have a particular thing that you are trying to learn or a particular concept that you are trying to get information on, you can scan through the text quickly to find it rather than trying to read every single word and every single sentence. Another sort of trick that you can use is when most people are writing, the first sentence of a paragraph is usually what the paragraph's about. So if you read the first sentence and it is not relevant to the thing that you want to know about, go to the next paragraph. And that will save you some time as you're reading through. Now, if we're talking about a 1 or 2 page paper, you may not notice a difference. But once you start getting into some of the more difficult references for things, longer papers, 40, 50 page papers, research, longer books, that can be really helpful. For things like books, where we're not talking about, 40, 50 pages, we're talking about 2, 3, 400 pages, that's where the contents index and control F can be helpful. So the contents page or the index page should give you an outline of what's being covered in the book so that you can make sure the book is actually relevant to the thing we're talking about. On a computer, Control F will allow you to find a word. It will search the document for the word. So if you have a particular word or phrase that you're trying to find, Control F will allow you to do that if it's a digital copy. If we're talking about articles, like let's say you're researching a concept and you want to go find a particular research article about it or a summary article or something like that. Most of the time in journals, articles will have something called an abstract. An abstract is like a paragraph that is an overall view of what the article is covering. So if you had, let's say, a 50-page article on the importance of washing your hands, then the abstract would say something like, this research article is going to discuss the importance of washing your hands using blah blah methodologies and reviewing previous literature such as blah blah and blah. And then you can say, oh, well, that's great. I know washing my hands is important, but that's not really relevant to the, I don't know, Pokemon that I wanted to research. I'm desperate to learn about Pokemon. So maybe this isn't a relevant article for me. And it just showed up because there was a water type Pokemon and you searched for water and it got mixed up. Whatever. Another thing that you can do is figure out what you already know and then focus on the part of the reading that you need. So if you have an entire 400-page book and there's only 2 chapters that you need, you can just focus on that. So skimming the article or skimming the book, figure out if it's relevant, and then if it's relevant, then you go through and do a thorough read while taking notes, and that can be the reading for comprehension. And so that can take potentially hundreds of pages of reading and condense it into maybe 10 pages of reading that's very focused on the relevant thing that you're trying to learn. Now, this isn't necessarily going to work for every single thing in every single class, but it's one of the ways that you can make sure you're a little bit more focused in the sort of, I hate to say it, but work smarter, not harder. Okay. Accessibility for notes. If you are sharing your notes, it's important to make sure that you have good notes. Typing versus handwriting can make a difference in how easy the notes are to understand. And this isn't just, oh, do you have good handwriting or not? If you have typed notes, well, you may not retain things as easily when typed. Typed notes are a lot easier to share because typed notes can be emailed. They can be sent on, different chats, Discord, WhatsApp, whatever. Whereas a picture of a handwritten note, that's a lot harder for somebody to be able to read who isn't in person with you. A lot of people will actually use shorthand as well. Now, I don't necessarily mean the official shorthand, which maybe you do that too, in which case, cool. But for a lot of people, they'll use different types of shorthand that can be confusing if you don't follow. For example, one of the degrees that I did was in math, and I got into the habit of using some mathematical notations in my notes. For me, makes perfect sense, and I can read through my notes and I understand what's going on. For, let's say, a normal person who isn't weird might look at my notes and be like, yeah, I have no idea what any of this means. What's even going on, and why is there a weird looking arrow there? What's up with the squiggly equal sign? Like, and so having a typed option can sometimes get rid of some of that because some of those weird things that you do can be harder to type, and then you are forced to fill in the rest of the blanks. Another thing that digital notes can be easier is they can be read aloud by a computer or a person a lot easier, and there's less issues with can I read their handwriting? Is this a full sentence? Did something get scribbled? It's also AI is actually another use of this because AI can help with accessibility. AI can do things like summarize some notes. So if you have 10 pages of notes, you can ask AI for some highlights. You can ask for summaries of recordings if you have recorded notes. So if you have for example, a recorded class, you can ask AI for a summary and then you can listen to the recording and you can see did the summary do it accurately. Now, a huge warning, like huge warning. AI is not always right. AI hallucinates. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, oh, yeah, I know. But please, AI is not always right. Just because the AI said it doesn't mean it's correct. Do not rely on the AI rather than all of your sources. Saying, oh, but the AI told me is going to fly with exactly 0 people. So AI as an assistant for accessibility in notes, summarizing things, referring back to things, yeah, sure, reasonable. Double check what the AI tells you. Make sure that it is actually giving you a summary. Was there anything that was missed? Don't just record something, tune it out the whole time, and then tell AI to give you a summary and never listen to the recording because AI can miss things. AI might not understand some of the words, and so it'll just go, well, that's not important, and ignore it. But it turns out that that was actually your final project that it was talking about, and if you don't have that information, you'll fail your final project. AI doesn't know. AI doesn't care. AI is not always right. Another thing that you can do for accessibility in notes is think about other ways to visualize information. Think about flowcharts, think about infographics, think about all of the different additions you could have to your notes to make it a little bit easier for other people to follow what's going on. Now, I have a couple of suggestions for note-taking software. So if you want to use specific software. Now, not all of these are free, and you need to make a choice that works for you. So GoodNotes and Notion are both not free. Now, there is some free trial for a week, limited free, whatever that you can do. But as of the recording, it's not, free and completely useful. Obsidian, I actually use this. So my experience with it is that it works really well if you're used to programming. If you are not used to any variety of programming, you may want to throw it through a wall. It has some really great features. It does some mind mapping that's really cool. You can add some of your own tags. You can link to other notes. There's some great things you can do with it, and you can actually build your own add-ons. However, if you have ever, let's say, looked at HTML code and went, oh, so complicated, you may not like it. GoodNotes, I kind of briefly tried. It was designed for people that want to have the pretty notes. So a lot of bullet journal people have recommended this. This is actually where I heard about it, as I do bullet journaling. And so if you wanted to do things like stickers, color coding, that can be a reasonable app. There's a lot of design options. Notion, I've briefly tried. There is a free version, but the limitations were so limited, I found it kind of frustrating. But they were really good about documentation. The sort of last suggestion that I had was OneNote. Most people have free access. If you are a student, you probably have access because your school probably pays Microsoft a dump truck of money. There's a lot of things that you can do with drawings, doodles, outlines. There's lots of tutorials. It's very popular. And there's usually some variety of app that is available on your phone. Now, these are just 4 suggestions that I had. There is obviously a lot more options out there in the world. These are just some very popular ones. So what I would suggest is pick and try. Watch a video on it. YouTube is a great resource. Go and watch a video. How do I use Obsidian? How do I use GoodNotes? How do I use OneNote? And just watch the 10-minute video. And if you find yourself looking at the video while somebody's explaining it and getting frustrated, maybe that's not for you. If you find yourself watching the video thinking, oh, wow, that's awesome, this is so brilliant, maybe that's the one for you. And then you can figure out which one you like best, kind of by trial and error. Now, I do also have some offbeat suggestions for study skills. So, studying in general. One offbeat suggestion that I have is something called body doubling. Now, you'll see this a lot in actually ADHD communities where they will make this suggestion, but this can be helpful for more people than people that are diagnosed with ADHD. Maybe you hear about body doubling and you're like, that's ridiculous. That's fine. Don't do it. No pressure. Literally, body doubling is you are just working near somebody else while they're working. So, for example, you could be in a room with somebody while they're working and you're just both sort of working parallel. You could be on the phone with somebody while you're both doing your own thing. This doesn't have to be somebody in your class, somebody in your major, somebody in your school. It can be a friend that you have and you both work on your own things. Um, I will say I personally will do this with my best friend where I will be working on something for my job. She will be working on something completely and totally different. And we're just sort of there keeping each other company on the phone as we do our work so that it's like, I'm trying to think how to describe it. It's kind of like accountability in a weird way because like she's not sitting there saying, oh my gosh, do your work. I'm not sitting there saying that. It's just somebody else is there with you and you're both working, so you feel the obligation to continue working. It's the best way I can describe it. For some people, check-ins for accountability can be really helpful. So setting up a check-in, once a week or twice a week and say, hey, this is what I plan to do this week, and then check in with them, hey, this is what I've done this week. For some people, that's really helpful, and having that check in can be a way to make sure that you aren't falling behind. I know some people will use classes as that check in. So if you have, like, for example, a once a week hybrid, the act of walking into the classroom and looking at your teacher is enough of a sort of boost to make you keep on time with your work so that you don't get to the end of the semester and go, oh, I've done nothing for this class for the entire semester. Oopsie whoopsies. Having that little bit of accountability for some people can be really helpful. Another sort of offbeat suggestion is while you're doing other things, listen to or watch things related to the topic. So for a lot of people, they listen to things as they are going to sleep, or they listen to things as they're driving in the car, or cooking dinner, doing laundry, stuff like that. And so having audio or video playing while you do that that is related to the topic you're trying to learn, whether the topic is, data science or computer programming or biology, it's still related to the topic, and sort of having that continuous stream of information and new things related to the topic you're trying to learn can be helpful for sort of continuing to study, even if it's not necessarily specifically on topic for the class, even if it's like mildly related. So if it's, let's say, a podcast about data science for your data science class, but they're talking about, what people are doing with AI use now and data visualizations, and you're actually learning about SQL, it's still kind of tangentially related. It's not necessarily going to help you with, let's say the lab, but they may end up talking about things that give you a better or deeper understanding of the topic you're trying to learn. So that can be another sort of offbeat suggestion for things you can do to help you study. So hopefully that was helpful, and hopefully you learned something new today, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.